Hey everyone, Chris Scott here with Fit Recovery, and today I have a really cool guest joining me for this episode. His name's Howie Gelfand, and some of you may or may not know who he is. He's actually one of the main real life people. If you have seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street, he has a very inspiring addiction recovery story. He also has a number of crazy addiction stories. We're going to try to get into both of those things today. So, Howie, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start from the beginning. I kind of sometimes I'll start at the end, but I feel like this is a story that I want to have unfold. So if you can start with, what was your relationship like with drugs or alcohol, maybe when you were growing up? Because we'll get to that point. I do want the focal point to be addiction, but we can also get into some of the more colorful things that happened. But, when you were a kid, was there anything you can trace, looking back to those years?
It's funny. When I got into recovery, I remember hearing, it starts way before you actually pick up a drink or a drug. Never got that. And then I think all the way back, my father, um, his best friend owned an amusement park in Queens, New York, for those of you that don't know. Um, and there was a particular ride I liked, and I used to say, just one more time, just one more time. And he would say, when is enough enough? And like in my brain, it's never enough. I have a favorite number, and that number is more. That's my favorite number. And that's the only time that that sentence made sense. That way before you pick up the drink or the drug, there are hints or signs of that. And that was the earliest memory. Maybe I was 6 or 7, and I really didn't become in trouble there was high school, same nonsense everyone does, booze and weed, and that nothing to excess. But I would say the circus of the brokerage firm kind of coincided with my dive into the deep end of drugs and alcohol.
So how old were you when you joined the brokerage firm? And had you had any problems with drugs and alcohol before then? You had a pretty normal relationship or maybe lack of a relationship with like alcohol, drugs before
No,
then?
I would say I had a good relationship with alcohol and drugs. It was working just fine. It was really just pot. Uh, I guess I just aged myself. Pot, booze, and occasionally Coke, very occasionally. And then I was 22 when I joined the brokerage firm, and that's where I got introduced to, the love of my life, which was Quaaludes.
For those of our audience who may not know, and I wouldn't have known if I hadn't watched the movie Wolf of Wall Street, honestly, like what are Quaaludes?
The greatest drug ever made. Ah,
So you had a good time. Do you know, I assume they're somewhat similar to like a sedative hypnotic or something like that.
yeah, I battled obesity my whole life. That's always been a weight issue. So when it was presented to me as just a pill with the same benefit of like 5 drinks or something like that, I'm in, you know. But the feeling was, far, far better than that. And then, kind of fast forward, I had a pill addiction, when I was right in the middle of it, of 15 to 20 a day, kind of like breakfast, lunch, dinner, and like a snack, really. And because at that time they were legalized, we were getting them from France. And the most popular guy out of 500 people at the brokerage firm was the FedEx guy. Because when the FedEx guy showed up, all the animals used to know why. And of course, the FedEx guy knew to basically shield himself and fight himself to my office where I divided them all up. But my son had just asked me, at your peak, what were you doing? I legitimately was $30 a pill on the low. 15 pills a day is 450. And if you figure it out, roughly a month, I had a 12 to $13,000 cash quaalude habit. Forget about everything that comes along with that. And there's a lot that comes along with that, like spending and not giving a flying fuck what something costs. That's, I would say, number one on the list.
Well, you were making plenty of money as it was. So it's probably like just living in a ridiculous dream of some sort. Do you recall the first time that you took the pills? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's pretty rare for your pills to be directly enabled by your employer. I was hiding drinking from my employer when I worked in finance in New York, except for
No,
the
I was
times when we were invited
encouraged.
out. Yeah.
I was absolutely encouraged. I remember the first pill, 34th Street and First Avenue. There was a Mexican restaurant called Baby Bo's Burritos. My friend D, that I won't mention by name, said you got to try just one, with like a Corona or something. I tried one. I don't know, 15, 20 minutes later, I kind of loved everybody. And then he walked me across the street to my first, I would say, high-end hooker, but these were out of work models. These were not hookers. These were girls who got 500 to 1,000 every time you saw them. So that was a good night.
Yeah. So I take it you had a lot of fun, and the pills obviously escalated in quantity. I do want to hear more about the stories, whether it was high-end hookers or whatever. So feel free to sprinkle those throughout. I don't want to press you on anything unless you
No,
want to
no,
tell it,
no.
but yeah. Uh, do you recall this escalating to a certain point and thinking to yourself like, "Whoa, what am I doing?" Because that happened to me a number of times with the alcohol, and that kind of tampered it down, mainly because of withdrawal. So for me, the alcohol became like a performance enhancing drug. And I see this with a lot of my type A clients who work in finance or other corporate jobs or they're executives. And it's like they want to quit, but they think they can't because they don't want to give a presentation with shaky hands. They don't want to walk in and be detoxing in front of their employees. Did you ever have that kind of tug of war, or was it just like a wild
Not
ride?
not with Quaaludes.
Okay.
You know, I would say one, well, I would say, one of my sponsors would say, one of the most powerful messages of your recovery is that I was sober almost 5 years from pills. I would consider myself, by trade, a pill addict. If you have a pill, I'll take it and then I'll ask you what it was. Um, what do they call that? A garbage head, whatever. So what you just described, I had with alcohol. First time I got sober, I never drank alcoholically, not even close to it. I was a full-blown pill addict. I would mix drinking in there, but I wasn't drinking alcoholically. And the powerful part of the story is I got sober from everything.
And how old were you, if you don't mind me interrupting, when you got
Yeah,
sober the
I
first time?
got sober the first time 2001, so I was what, 67, 34
Okay.
when I first got sober. I had almost 5 years, and then just one night out to dinner with a friend of mine, uh, I see what uh, according to him, I said, "Wow, look at that nice looking bottle of vodka." He said, "Only an addict or an alcoholic would say, look at that nice looking bottle." I think it was a bottle of Grey Goose or something. And like out of the big book, I ordered it as if it was a glass of milk. Why? Because I was deathly afraid at this point of pills. You couldn't pay me enough money to touch a pill. Booze? I never drank alcoholically. So, I'll take a Grey Goose with a splash of cranberry and a lime, which I did. And then that escalated so quickly that if I had to put a guess on it, maybe 2 weeks later, I was a full blown alcoholic. Never to pick up another pill, but a full blown 24/7 alcoholic. So, and back to your original question, I never, Quaaludes was just a crazy ride. I never said, oh my God, this is too much, like any pill. One didn't do it. So now let's try two. Two didn't do it. Let's do three. Three didn't do it. Let's do four. And, I had a tough time towards the end getting buzzed off of five, and when I say five, it was five, like Pez, five at a clip. Um, but, you know,
I wonder if you may not have created some like severe biochemical imbalance that lingered from the pills, especially if they target a similar neurotransmitter system, that then the alcohol years later, with that imbalance not balanced out, maybe filled the gap a bit. And then that's why you had a relationship with alcohol that you hadn't really had before. And also, it just being the alcohol, you didn't have the pills to sub in and do what they were doing. So it kind of makes sense. I mean, there's cross tolerance, right, between like benzodiazepines and alcohol, barbiturates, and possibly quaaludes. I'm not that familiar with their chemical structure, but I know, when I went to detox when I was 27, I had drank like, I don't know, 20 drinks. And I had told my parents to come help me because I wanted to check in for rehab. They wouldn't let me in until Monday. It was like a Saturday. I don't know why. It was like, we don't roll except on Mondays. So I'm like, don't worry, I won't
that must
drink.
have
I'm
been
sitting
some
there.
weekend.
My hands are shaking like that. And I'm like, I got to go call a friend. I lied. I walked right into a bar next door. I did call a friend, but I also walked into the bar next door and drank enough to keep my hands from stop shaking. And that was probably 20 drinks. So then I got driven basically to the hospital. And my biggest fear, well, I felt awful because, I felt like a bad person and it's not good to lie, obviously. And I felt trapped by this thing that made me lie to my parents, of all people, who had driven like 4 hours to come see me. And I get to the hospital and they shoot me immediately in the arm with Ativan, which is a benzodiazepine. And all of a sudden I felt fine. But you see, unlike you, I had a phobia of pills my entire life. I don't know why. I think it was because, I don't know, I was given half a Percocet when I had my tonsils out once, and I felt like the room was spinning really fast and I wanted to throw up, but I couldn't because I'd had my tonsils out. So I think maybe that just made me totally phobic. To this day, I don't like taking pills. If I go to the doctor and they're like, you need to take this, I really don't want to. Natural supplements I can do, but prescription medicines, especially ones that impact the brain, still scare me. So, it would be interesting to see what would have happened if I had gotten into pills. And I didn't get into cocaine or anything like that for a similar reason. My gut instinct just told me, if I slid so easily into drinking 20 drinks or more, or 30 or whatever, uh, wonder what that would look like with cocaine, and probably not good. I might not be here having this conversation with you. So,
Right.
but at any rate, I want to rewind a little bit. I know this is a 12-year period, but can you walk us through what happened, what transpired from 22 to 34?
Um, where do you want me to focus on? I mean,
Anything you find interesting. Yeah, the
I
brokerage
mean,
firm, the Quaalude escalation, some of the experiences that you feel like sharing, and what
yeah,
brought you
sure.
from the first pill you ever took at that restaurant to the point where you realized it was time to get sober.
Yeah. Um, well, I was under the impression, when I was I got a call from a friend who said, Howie, I got a job that was tailor-made for you. And at the time, I was probably making 30, $40,000 as a kid who dropped out of college. I was in college literally for one test. They said, sit between a fat chick and an Asian, cheat, and you'll be in good shape. P.S. That's, I guess, when they started changing who gets what test. I got a 36 and waited until the money ran out of the account that my parents gave me and said, all right, I'm done. It was time to take over the world. So I was working at this office, a friend's father's business. I was basically running it when I was 21. Got this call from my friend, got to come into this place. It's made for you. Ba, 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 ba. Um, I thought I was really interviewing for a legitimate brokerage firm. Like I'm this like good kid from a good household. I'm not looking to get involved in something wrong, illegal, even in the gray. And it took me a while to realize something was wrong, like a long time. Um, your first job is cold calling, making 300 to 400 phone calls, old school on a touch tone phone, no dialers, no this, no that, till your fingers really bleeding. And when I first got a hunch that something was up, I remember I had this client, very wealthy, and he took a lot of stock on a trade. And he said to me, if it goes up, like you say, I would definitely take more. I said, okay, I'll keep that in mind and we'll be in touch. So I went into my friend's office, D, and D said, oh, is that the case? Okay. By the time I got back to my desk, the stock was up. And I go, am I that much of a stock guru at, 22 years old? Or did or have I just been played with some funky donkey? I called the client. He bought a fortune of the stock. That was my first indication that this may not be, Charles Schwab, or at that time, Bear Stearns or Lehman Brothers or something like that. Um, as you said, I'm pretty sure the more drugs you did, the quicker you rose up and the more adverse you were to it, the more you were kind of shunned because to become part of the clique, you know, uh, drugs was a part of it. To this day, if someone says, "What really brought that whole thing down?" What really brought it down? At the end of the day, the answer is drugs. No question about it. Not illegalities, not this, drugs. Drugs absolutely brought that thing down. Um, so my career there, like anyone else's, went from, you became an account opener, then a junior broker. I mean, I can remember as an account opener, when you worked really, really hard, you could open up an account or two a day. And I was opening up like 3 to 5 a day. And guys were like, what are you saying? You have to be saying it illegally. Nothing could be further from the truth. I just had I think, as you had said about Matt, I had a very soothing, calm voice where I was surrounded by a lot of kids, sounding like that cheap car salesman or whatever, to the point where some of my clients, or a lot of them, used to hang up the phone because the final words that I would always say is, hold on, let me transfer you to my assistant. She'll take on the information, go over this, go over that. Okay. They'd get on the phone with her and they'd say, excuse me, what did I buy? I just kind of put them to bed. And I guess that's where I picked up the main nickname was Velvet. That was kind of one of my main nicknames because unlike the majority of the salesmen, I was just this power in voice inflection. Just because you're loud doesn't mean you're powerful. A lot of times when I got low, it was a lot more powerful. So, I wasn't saying I sold very clean. Dirty would be guaranteeing them profits and stuff like, never said anything such.
Hmm.
I just had a way about me that I opened up all these accounts and I don't know. I started doing the same thing when I became a broker. As a broker, your primary job is raising money, raising assets. And I started raising money like it was taking candy from a baby, to the point where other brokers, when they had wealthy guys, would be like, Howie, you got to call my guy. He's telling me I have no more money, but I know if you get on the phone with him, it's going to be a whole different ball game. And and then I was invited to be the baby of the bunch partner. If you recall the movie, there was a guy sitting with Matthew McConaughey, um, and I forgot who played him or whatever. But there was a guy sitting with Matthew McConaughey when they started doing this in the restaurant and blah blah blah. And that was the guy whose shares I bought out. And I was really the baby of the bunch. I was probably 10 years younger than any partner. And another sign that there might have been something illegitimate about this, when asked how much I have to give to buy in, I had to give in every nickel I had saved to that point, and I was scared shitless.
Mm.
The following day, the wolf told me what to buy, and not only did I have every nickel that I had given up yesterday, but plus an additional 50, $100,000. So all it was really a test of sincerity, or whatever you want to call it. It wasn't really an investment. So I became a partner. What came along? My reserve spot, which was the most sought after, you would think it was the most sought after thing in the world, because you had 500 guys in one room, literally one big room. So that was a very sought after thing. I had $10,000 on a corporate card, spend how you want, and my commissions ran from 100 to 150,000 my end every month. Some more, some less. Um, but the stories in there, and you had said something that triggered something. Were you like in this bubble or whatever? And they used to call it Disneyland, because it's like once you left, you were in the real world, but once you were in this office, it was an ulterior universe. It was just completely different. Um, the perks that came along with it, the gambling stories are insane. I could throw one that comes to mind. These big casinos will do anything to get your business. And I guess the funniest one is, there used to be a casino called the Showboat, and their hook was kind of to get the kids into the casinos, the young kids, to get the parents in to gamble. They had their own bowling alley. So I took about 20 of my mongoloid brokers to the Showboat Casino for a weekend, a night. That was always a big incentive. And leave it to them at 3 o'clock in the morning. They turn to me and they go, "We want to go bowling." I go, "Oh no." "And we want our own bowls engraved." I go, "It's just getting worse." And you always have a casino host, call it a liaison, a concierge. And at three, I remember his name, whatever, Mike Camersana. Poor guy, at 3 o'clock in the morning, his beeper goes off at his house. He's dead asleep, I'm sure. And the operator or whoever tells him, "Listen, Mr. Gelfand is requesting your presence at the casino. His brokers want a bowl, and they want balls drilled in their names." Well, P.S. It all came to fruition. I mean, that's one of the funnier ones. And then the only other really fun, I mean, I could spend the rest of the hour talking about gambling stories, was it was a very famous Chinese restaurant in the city that me and my friend like to frequent. And whenever he was in the mood to gamble. I happen to like Peking duck. And he would always, if he was in the mood, and we were going to take a helicopter from the heliport in the city straight to Atlantic City, he would like, it would just be the four of us, me and my girlfriend, him and his wife. He would like lean back in his chair and go like this. That meant only order half a Peking duck because we're leaving early. P.S. One night, his wife said, "No way. No way you guys pulling this shit tonight. No way." He turned to her and said, "Name it. Just name it." The craziest thing. She goes, "Fine, I want a fucking horse." P.S. A few days later, Davis the horse got delivered to her house.
My God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what they will do for the whales of the casinos is not to be believed. Um, and then, through the years, the cars. I mean, it all comes with the territory. I had a $500,000 collection of watches. Watches, and the addiction part of it, to kind of tie it in, I used to say to myself, you know what, if I could just get that one watch, I'll be filled. I'll feel good. I will have arrived. I'd get the watch. Usual, tag on it would be 20 to $25,000. 5 seconds later, I'm like, so what? It's another watch. And that was that void that I couldn't fill with materialistic things. Um, Cars, you name it, I had it. You name it, I crashed it. When I first got sober, my sponsor asked me, Howie, this is a program of honesty. How many car crashes were you really in? I said, I wrote down about 18. He said, come on. I really want you to think about it and call me back. So I said, you know what? Maybe he's right. I'm so used to being full of shit, it comes naturally. Let me write it down. So I wrote down all the cars. I called him back. I said, you know what? You're right. It was 18. I said, and I'll name every car. He goes, I don't believe it. The side note, not a sober accident. Not one. Everyone was on something. Throughout my life, I battled addiction. It was always a different substance. I went through Vicodin. I went through that whole family. I went through the family of Xanax, Quaaludes, Coke, booze. It was always something other than, of course, the period now where I'm coming up on 12 years, and the period then where I had almost five. So, in terms of the cars, I crashed every high end car you could possibly imagine. And I guess the two top stories from there is I pulled my Ferrari into my own kitchen. Basically, the hood made it into the kitchen, and then I knew to stop. I
Was
had a,
that a Quaaludes? I recall the
yeah,
scene where the wolf climbs in the car with the Quaaludes on under the influence, and I'm
yeah,
picturing
yeah,
something
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
I don't know how anyone would even start driving with
Yeah,
that.
I pulled my Ferrari into the kitchen, literally. And then there's a famous steakhouse on Long Island. One night, my friend D, he wanted to borrow my Ferrari, and he said, "So you'll borrow mine." Wasn't such a bad deal. He had a convertible Bentley. So I said, "Take mine, I'll take yours for the night." So, of course, he got fucked up in mine. I got fucked up in his. Um, I end up going to this steakhouse that on the outside has bricks. It's a brick building. And somehow in my sick mind, I thought it was like a drive-through, and I drove this Bentley straight into a brick wall.
Whoa.
Thank God, not with such a huge impact, because I know if I had to deal with that the next day, there'd really be some hell to there'd really be some hell to pay. And because I was in so many crashes and I used to screw up my wheels on a daily basis, I put a guy in business that was in the business of detailing and fixing and this and that. I called him up. I said, Greg, I have an impossible job for you. So what is it? You need to straighten out the grill of a Bentley, which, if anyone knows, is like slat, 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 and the front of it as best you can. And, he did a great job that the next morning, Danny didn't know anything. My car looked fine and all was well.
So I'm
So
guessing you never did time for like DUI stuff or got in trouble somehow.
got what's funny is that I don't know if it's funny. For 20 years, I ran around like Superman. I mean, how you drive like this? I mean, this was every day. I drove under the influence thousands of times. I never caught one consequence other than these accidents, which I never got in trouble for. Insurance, whatever, including one where I was doing over 100 in an SL 600 and woke up from the crash,
Whoa.
pulled all the way over to the shoulder, threw whatever cash I had in my pocket basically into the window of this car and drove off without thinking twice about it and somehow made it home. So over those 20 years, I never hurt myself. I never hurt anyone else. In 1 year of relapsing, I caught every single consequence there is. Two DWIs. The list can go on and on, but you could
Let's get
start
to
at.
that. Yeah. Um, so I guess as you were approaching, you said you were 34 when you got sober the first time. Is that right? Or from the pills at least. So in
Yeah.
those last, and I assume, but I don't want to assume, did that coincide with things going down with the brokerage firm, or was that a decision that you made?
Yeah. I mean, that was after trying to find myself. That didn't quite work out. Then I felt like I was in semi-retirement. And then all of a sudden, when you're living a life that just paying the bills runs you 30 or $40,000 a month, mind you, as a single guy, it goes quick. It goes quick, and I wasn't bringing in any income. So it certainly coincided with that. And it was several years later where I had met I use the term loosely, woman that I was going to marry. And, the sobriety piece came up. And I think I just said, you know what? Now would be an opportune time. Monies are disappearing. This looks like it's a serious relationship. So for the first time, I went into a detox and a rehab.
And just to
And
be clear, was this before or after the whole brokerage firm basically imploded?
brokerage firm went bust in 96. My first entrance into a rehab arena was in 2001.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
so I
and,
was
and
using that whole time.
and did you get in trouble, when
No,
that
I
went down?
was I was the only partner who never got indicted or arrested. And to this day, I thank my brother, 10-year older sibling, who came up with the craziest strategy. He called me up one night and he said, listen, asshole, one night you're going to be going to one of your famous restaurants and you're going to see red lights behind you, and your life is going to change forever. So everyone else has been arrested. Guess what, genius? You're on deck. We're going to the feds before the feds come to you. I was like, huh? Phone's going bad. Can't hear you. It's exactly what we did. We went to the feds before the feds came to us. They had nothing to indict me for. They had nothing to arrest me for. These weren't like tough guys from like Brooklyn and the Bronx. These were all Jewish guys, hitting each other with bagels and lox. They couldn't wait to rat on each other. So by the time I got in there, they knew everything. Maybe they wanted to confirm this or confirm that or whatever. And that's exactly what I did. So as a result of, he said the best defense is an offense. So I wrote out a gargantuan check to a criminal attorney, walked me through the process, and I was never, so the only real trouble was the two DWIs that I had picked up within that 1 year.
Hmm.
After 20, 25 years of all these accidents, of thousands of times driving drunk, never getting in trouble.
What do you think caused that? Do you think that was some universe thing? Or do you
Yes,
think, okay.
has to be. How do you explain it? 20, 25 years of running around like a maniac and never hurting yourself or anyone else. And then in 1 year, suffering every single consequence you could possibly imagine. Uh, Now having to take a taxi all of a sudden to probation, um, having to take all these courses, not having a driver's license, going into a rehab, having to be detoxed. I couldn't believe it, but alcohol, I've learned a lot. I'm a licensed, unlicensed pharmacist, you will. Um, I didn't realize that benzos and booze is the only thing you could die from not taking or from just stopping abruptly. I figured, it's heroin or meth, and that's not true. So I had to be, whatever they gave, Librium, I think, if I remember correctly, they used to give you Librium to come off alcohol. Um, and, but and you'll excuse me, but like time frames and when things happen, I'm tough with. Why? Because I think my eggs were so scrambled over until I really, really got sober in 2012 that like I can't tell you how long it really took me to get out, drinking alcoholically. I remember telling my son a few months ago, one of the bitches of this whole thing, there was this really, really, really hot chick that worked at the brokerage firm. I know I brought her back to the house. I can't tell you today what happened. I can't tell you with any certainty. I had sex with her. We played Monopoly. I don't know. I have no idea. And the one thing I'll tell you is I'm not a liar. And that's just not because that's the way I live today. It's just kind of the way I've been, I guess since I'm sober. There's no reason in my life, certainly. My stories are disbelievable enough that there's no room for embellishment. I'm in the midst and have been of a pretty big book project with a New York Times best-selling writer. He happens to also write for James Patterson. And when we were going through the initial stories, he was like, "Come on, come on." And to convince him, I used to get the third party on the phone to confirm the story. So whether it was the story about me losing $250,000 in Puerto Rico, I would say, "Hold on." I'd get the president of the casino on the phone. Was it true? Just say yes or no. Yes. Goodbye, Stu. Click. The Mercedes dealer. Jerry, was it true or not? True. Click. So eventually this writer said, "You know what? If you told me Jesus landed in your backyard in a helicopter, said, Howie, it's time to have lunch, I'm good. You never have to do a third party confirmation again." So, you know, unlike that of the wolf, where my humble opinion, there is a tremendous amount of embellishment. Every story that comes out of my mouth is 100% true. So,
Out of
it,
pure curiosity, um, how much of the movie seemed to be total embellishment? Were you actually throwing little people against the wall at
well, I
parties?
kind of, I went in at a very, I don't know if it was the first week I saw it, but I kind of went into the movie like as the unknown comic. Like, if I could, I would have worn a paper bag over my head. I just wore a hoodie. I went in with my brother, who again, total opposite of me, 10 years older, attorney, very straight laced. And when you come out, you hear the chitter chatter, and everyone's like, that's Hollywood, that's bullshit, embellishment, da 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 da. My brother turned to me and said, if they only knew that that was the mild version. I mean, there were some things in that movie that weren't true, that were embellished upon, but overall, that was a mild version. And
Good to know.
that was every single day, not a day off from complete chaos, insanity, Sodom and Gomorrah, um, Caligula, you name it. It was every day.
Interesting. So I want to know a little more about that period from, I guess, 34 when you get off the Quaaludes, if I'm right, and then when you drank the vodka. What was your life like there? I know you was curiosity about the vodka that, at least at first glance, it would seem you were just curious about a bottle, and we know the subconscious mind can be very powerful.
Yeah.
And there could have been some imbalances that you hadn't addressed, but I'm just curious, like, what was that period like for you generally?
Once I picked up booze,
Sorry, between putting the pills and then picking up the booze later.
oh, it was just trying to get try and put a life back together. I've had therapists on and off. Um, and then I always get to the same point, like, all right, I've given you a few $1,000s. What is the fucking purpose of this? Um, but I remember just saying, like, I used to say, could you imagine you're Michael Jordan? You're at the top of your game. You wake up one morning and you say, hi, good morning. This is your wake up call, Michael. Oh, by the way, you can't play basketball anymore. Click. That's how I had compared it to. All I knew was this stock brokerage gig. Overnight, I had zero income and I didn't know how to do anything else. What do you do? So I ran to my place in Florida to collect my thoughts. That didn't work out very well since one of my best friends owned the hottest club down there. A story in and of itself, as most are. Um, so I really just tried to put something together to try and figure something out. And I think in recovery, they say the same brain that creates the problem can't create the solution or something like that. And this brain was mangled, torn to pieces. Eventually, literally by the grace of God, I got involved in the mortgage business. I had some heavy hitter friends that had a big mortgage business. I bought my way into owning a branch. And once again, substances. Um, the opportunities in this life to get rich or the business opportunities always came my way. The only reason they never worked out was substances. I bought into this mortgage company. I own my own branch of it, and it wasn't working out so well. I had invested a lot of the cash that I had managed to squirrel away from Uncle Sam at the time. I was one of the few guys smart enough, again, a story in and of itself, how I closed all my bank accounts that day we went out of business and collected all my money from all the banks. Um, but because it wasn't going so well, the head of the all the branches said, Howie, we're going to give you an opportunity. You could have the cash back that you invested, or, come on board, work hard. And what did I do? Cash back. I don't want to plug harder or work harder. And plus, you know, getting the cash back sounds good. Totally, non-sober thinking. I was in a great business. So I took the cash back, and then I got into another business, which was kind of gray, mortgage modifications. That was a hot business for a while. Whatever business I was in, I was the biggest producer. Sober, not sober. I don't know how. I don't know why. As an addict, I always felt less than. So when someone would say, "You are unbelievable. I mean, your salesmanship is just amazing." I'd like look over my shoulder like they can't possibly be talking to me, you know? But I was always the biggest producer. And I think the mortgage modification was kind of the last gig. Small things here and there, nothing that ever materialized until I picked up a bottle. And then once I picked up that bottle, my go-to line is, you know, those years of drugs left me with some money, with some relationships, with, some sense of normalcy. Whatever drugs left me with, this liquid completely wiped me out of. To this day, that's just unconscionable to me. I mean,
Can you
what?
elaborate? Because that's super interesting. And I often, tell my clients, and alcohol, if you think about it, is it's an energy suck. And we are the energy that we project out to the world.
Right.
Without that, we don't do anything. We lay on the couch. I used to spend entire days after leaving work early, laying on my couch, just trying to get my hands stop shaking. I mean, that's like a living death, basically. You do that enough, the more you drink, the more you have to check out.
Well, I was told I was hospitalized 4 months in a row towards the end, all for alcohol poisoning.
How long
You
did you
know,
drink that? So from picking up the bottle to quitting.
couple of years.
Okay.
But I would say it was my best guess. It was horrific for 6 months.
The first six
Literally,
months or the last?
the last 6 months
Okay.
before I got sober. And within those last 6 months, there were 4 hospital stays. I would just dial 911 because I couldn't function. At one point, I do remember clearly 911 or the guy that drove the ambulance saying, Howie, you can't do this. This isn't like a taxi. You can't do this every month. My last hospital stay was 2 weeks. These 4 prior were long weekends. This was a 2 week stay. Why? Because primarily I'll try to make it short and sweet, but when I was found by my brother and sister-in-law after the final run, I was covered in black and blues. They thought I had the shit kicked out of me. Meanwhile, it was for me just bouncing around my own place like a pinball. Black and blue covered. And unbeknownst to me, somewhere during those 2 weeks, I bounced into the oven and turned the gas on.
Oof.
So when they finally found me, hazmat was called immediately, and they didn't know how long I had been breathing in gas. So I had lost my voice. I had no ability to speak. I had zero ability to think. For some reason, I lost my ability to walk. And I then spent 2 weeks in the hospital. And I was that guy you see in the movies that, like, the doctor brings the residents over and says, "This is an alcoholic. And if he drinks again, there's a good chance he'll die." Well, being the good alcoholic that I am, guess what I did after 2 weeks at that hospital stay?
I think
I,
I could
dr-
guess. Yeah.
I drank. I got sober for real because I ran. I think the big book says when your card reads zero or your score is like zero. I ran out of moves. The eviction sticker was on my apartment. Everyone I had borrowed money from was done. I had no other moves. And I had to really, really move out and get sober. And apparently, the only way to do that was to go to a rehab and then go to a sober house. So you're looking at perhaps one of the only people in the world that walked into social services with Louis Vuitton bags, no joke, and Ferragamo shoes because that's all I owned. And then when I filled out the forms, the girl kind of said, "You got to be pulling my leg because based on this form, you qualify for every single thing." Everything, it was the easiest form I could fill out. You know, as good as I could possibly write zeros, everything was zero. And that really started it. I lived in a sober house after living in all these houses, having endless. I mean, I walked up to that house like it was the Green Mile. And I lived there for 6 months, no air conditioning during the summer, And as I tell my kids all the time, this isn't the road I would have chosen, but it serves me well today because when I'm in someone's house and I hear the central air click on, I'm giggling inside. Why? Because everyone's taking it for granted. I'm the only douchebag that actually lived somewhere that had no air conditioning for that long of a time, sharing it with 14 other guys. Um, and in looking back, it wasn't such a bad time. No bills. I was living on $40 a month. That's what the government gives you a month because they're paying for your sober house. They're paying for the absolute most disgusting food that gets delivered, but you get $40 a month. And a working chapter in the book is Snapple or razor blades. Because when I had that money, one of my addictions has become Diet Peach Snapple. And I used to think long and hard, am I going to spend it on a fresh razor blade or am I going to spend $1.50 on a Snapple? Now, today, I'm back to being a big shot. I buy a 12 pack of Snapple.
It's
So I'm
Diet
back.
Snapple.
Yeah,
Huh,
so I'm back.
good.
Uh,
That's amazing. So you lost everything. And there
every
you were.
single thing.
Did you battle intense cravings or were you just done? I think some people have this psychological or spiritual switch where they're like, not going back to that. That was awful. Other people, it's like, well, maybe.
So glad you brought that up. On, I don't know, my son's running the show with podcast because I don't know if it's TikTok or TikTok or Instagram. I don't know anything.
I'm
He's
I'm not good at social media. If I were, then more people would probably know about Fit Recovery. But that's okay.
ah,
We're slowly but surely.
all right. I'll help you in any way that I can. Um, I had remind me. You had just said something that triggered something. What did
Sure. Yeah. So when you were climbing back out from after
Oh,
losing
I got it.
everything, yeah.
Someone on one of my, again, TikToks or podcasts or whatever asked an interesting question. What's the toughest thing you ever had to either get through or do in your life? Without pausing for a second, I said, getting sober a second time. Getting sober that first time, easy breezy. I took to it like a fish to water. No cravings, no drunk dreams, no this, no, none of it. The second time I had to get sober, I couldn't get a day. I
Do you
was that
think
guy.
that, sorry to interrupt, but do you think that's because the first time it was primarily pills and the second time it was
No,
primarily alcohol? Is that the case though?
yes,
Okay.
it was the case. I mean, by the second time I went into a rehab, I was looked at like a dinosaur. You're in for what? Alcohol. Put him in the geriatric center. Um, but without hesitation, toughest thing in my life and my sobriety, getting sober a second time. And I say no to what you just said before. Do you think it was pills? That because in AA the whole time I heard the first time's a gift. Obviously, I didn't hear it clear enough, and that proved to be my truth. The first time was so easy. Like I was like, what is everyone making such a big deal about? I put it down, it's down. As my first sponsor, may you rest in peace, would say, the pilot light is out. Just don't light it again. And that's how I found it to be. Um, and I was that guy now trying to get sober again. I don't have a license, so I got to rely on someone to pick me up, go to a meeting, come home, drink. Go to a meeting, come home, drink. Go to a meeting, come home. You want to talk about living in insanity? I could not get a day. I don't know for how long that was.
Were you drinking in the sober living home? Was that
No,
okay?
once again, bad with time frames and
Yeah.
timelines, and I may be off. Once I went to the sober house, my sober date is 12, 12, 12. Why? Because I said, that's a tough one to forget. My father, may he rest in peace, he was my first sober date. I blew that. So 12, 12, 12 seemed like a reasonable date to remember. And once I got sober, then that was it. That was it. It was 6 months in the sober house. Um, and I used that sober living the way you're supposed to. Get sober, get your shit together, make a plan, and get the fuck out. And I was surrounded by guys who just wanted to hide out in these sober house. Well, if I stay here for 12 months, I can go to that one, and then I can go to that one, and I could apply again. It's like, no, it's cool. I'm having some fun. Sundays I made omelets for everybody, and but I want to get on with my life. And that's what I did. And then 6 months later, you're allowed 12 months. 6 months later, I rented a bedroom out of a friend's house. And then a short time after, I rented a basement apartment. And then, list goes on and on. And today, I'm coming up on 12 years sobriety. I'm pretty much the sole guardian of my kids for many years. So you want to talk about changing a life. I went from supervised visits where either my brother, my sponsor, or someone else had to be there to visit with my kids to my kids living with me for the past 3 years by choice.
That's amazing. Yeah. And good for you. That's super inspiring. I know a lot of people listening are going to find a lot of inspiration in that because a lot of people listening are probably closer to where you were in the beginning. I'm
I
curious,
mean,
about you said you went from not being able to get a day, the second time almost impossible, but then you did hack it. So was there a catalyst there besides just 12, 12, 12? Was there something that changed?
no, but there wasn't anything that changed. I think that's kind of when I ran out of moves. But my proof of a higher power, I call him God, was here with these, call it 20,000 days, just to throw out a number, where I always had to have a substance, right? What happened between Tuesday and Wednesday? What happened? That Tuesday, I was that same guy as I was the past 20,000 days. And that Wednesday where I didn't pick up and now haven't picked up for, let's call it 6,000 days. What happened? Oh, right. That one day I said, today is going to really be the day, as if I hadn't said that 1,000 times. That's my hard evidence there's a God. I have a couple of other instances, but you can't fuck with that one. There's no other explanation. There's zero explanation. How does this guy finally get sober? It's not because he made this big grand wish or wrote it down or thinking of all the crazy ways I used to try and when I used to get a fresh, I used to call it a tennis can, 240 pills in a bottle, looked like this. I would try and make envelopes. This one had 20, this one had 19, this had 18, 17. So I would wean myself off. The only problem was that I was into the third envelope by, the eighth day or however you want to put it. So that didn't work either. So that's my hard evidence. It's got to be a power greater than me because I couldn't do it. Proof was in the pudding.
I like it. So, I guess I'm also wondering, did you have like instances where your addiction potential or tendencies started to rise up in other ways? Did you feel like you were playing whack-a-mole at any point? Did you feel like you were imbalanced? And did you grow out of that if you did?
I feel like my life is whack a mole. You know, I would keep the listeners and you on the phone, on the phone. Here we go again on TikTok for the next 3 hours, going through the list of consequences that I have faced, and I'll just rattle them off quick. IRS over 1 million, New York State tax over 500,000, no driver's license, wage garnishment, homeless, um, FBI, SEC, NASD. I mean, really. So part of my story is you can get through every single consequence there is and stay sober. I mean, I laugh at it. I look at myself, I go, I don't know how you do it. And I'm surrounded by people that say, sober people that say, if one of those things hit me, I'd be in a corner with a sleeve of Oreo cookies and an IV of milk shaking. I say, listen, it is what it is. Can't get blood from a stone. And for 12 years, I remember when I rented my first place, basement apartment, my landlord came in. He says, old school Italian. Oh, there's no fucking furniture in the joint. How are you going to sleep here? My answer was, I'll figure it out. For 12 years, that's my go to line. I don't know how. Yo, 6 figures in child support. How are you ever overcoming that? And if they're in your life, let me be the first to tell you that's a nightmare. Guess what? You know how much I owe today? Zero. I have a full driver's license. I have no wage garnishment. Still in a payment plan with the IRS, with the New York State. The FBI doesn't send me any greeting cards anymore. Um, you know, I've so the part of the story is, including obesity and drug addiction and all that other shit. No matter what hits you, and no matter how low, because I couldn't get any lower. I could not. I had lost everything but my life. And you can come back. You can. I'm not sure how, but one of my lines is definitely when you're faced with no other option, it's amazing what we can do.
I think that's a beautiful line on which to conclude this. I feel like we could talk for hours and maybe we will again soon. I want people to know where they can find out more about you. You mentioned you may have a book coming out. If you want to share any of that, go for it.
Yeah, no, the only thing I could really share at this point is it's going to be tragic. It's going to be, I laughed my ass off reading what I've done so far. As I said, it's with a ghostwriter, a best-selling New York Times author, writes for James Patterson. But I can be found. I got to look at notes. Everything I didn't look at notes for. Instagram is the underscore American underscore nightmare. And where did I come up with that name? Because the whole world is under this misconception that if you have millions of dollars and you're rich, you're going to be happy. You're not. Um, Under TikTok, it's the official comeback. And I guess
Awesome.
that's it.
Great. Well, I will eagerly and anxiously await your book because I'm going to read that. I would love to talk to you again
Same.
after that comes out. And there's always so much whenever I have an interview with someone interesting. And to be honest, this has probably been probably the most entertaining episode that we've had. A lot of our videos are how-to videos or instructional things, and filling in the nutritional missing links for your recovery. That
Oh,
this is
if you want,
colorful.
if you want like a how to get obese and lose the weight or how to get stoned and get sober, I'm
Hey,
all
why not? Exactly. I love it. Open to
in.
any and all ideas. Uh,
Exactly.
but yeah, I feel like we could talk about next time about relationships. We didn't really delve into that, but I think it's good to save something for later, and also to give people a reason to really check out your stuff, read your book when it comes out. So Howie, thank you so much for talking to me today. I
Hey,
appreciate it.
man, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it and had fun.
Hey everyone, Chris Scott here. If you liked the information on today's episode regarding supplementation and empowerment strategies for addiction recovery, then please subscribe to the Elevation Recovery podcast and leave us a rating and review on iTunes. And if you benefited directly from this information, I'm confident in saying that you'll love the information-packed online courses that Matt Finch and I have created. Matt Finch's Ultimate Opiate Detox 4.0 is a 6-module, 30-activity course that contains video lessons, written lessons, PDF downloads, worksheets, audios, and much more. And it has everything you could possibly need to know to conquer opioid addiction in the easiest and most comfortable way possible. My own course, Total Alcohol Recovery 2.0, is the most cutting-edge resource for anyone who wants to transcend alcohol and build their best lives. To get these courses, to learn more, and to read testimonials, simply go to opiateaddictionsupport.com/ultimate. Again, that's opiateaddictionsupport.com/ultimate for Matt's course, or for my course, go to fit-recovery.com/course. Again, that's fit-recovery.com/course. You can also go to elevationrecovery.com to see the show notes for this episode.